All right, everyone, we are live. Apologies, I was a little bit late, but welcome to Jack Jewell Live, my latest briefing on politics and culture. I can see a few of you are already in the chat, so really appreciate that. And I hope everyone has had a great start to 2026. And I plan on bringing you more lives this year, so look out for those. So today I want to talk about three stories, all right? So the first is the backlash faced by Laila Cunningham, who is the new Reform UK mayoral candidate. And the next one is the latest and tired, predictable accusations of racism surrounding BBC's The Traitors. There's always something with the BBC, right? And all this woke shit. So we're going to get into that. And finally, in an uncut bonus after show from my Substack members, I'll talk about the latest Planet Fitness trans controversy. Yes, we're doing that again. And this really reveals the institutional failure of some of these organizations around gender policy. So if you want to head to the Substack when that part comes around for the bonus after show, the link is in the description and it's also in the live chat. All right, I'm just going to make sure all of you can hear me and see me. I'm a baby live streamer. All right, so let's go to our first topic, everyone. Here we go. All right, let's talk about Leila Cunningham, right? And quick note before we start. So if you find these live discussions useful, feel free to subscribe on my YouTube channel. And like I said, we have that after show later on Substack. Let's start with Laila Cunningham, the Reform UK and the online Islam row, because it's pretty revealing that go beyond just one candidate here. So if you're not familiar with this lady, Laila Cunningham used to be a conservative counselor. She is an ex-magistrate, I believe, so she has a background in law. She has 7 kids, and she was born in the UK. She grew up here, and she has Egyptian parents who moved over from the UK. And she's also from a Muslim background, but very much not like a lot of the Muslim politicians we're seeing on the scene. I see her as extremely different. And she has been announced as the new mayoral candidate for Reform UK when we are going to be voting once again to try and get Sadiq Khan out in 2027, I believe. He's now on his 3rd term. Why do people keep voting for this guy? Who knows? But I honestly think Laila has a good chance here. And I personally love her. I think she's an incredible candidate. But I'm not going to talk too much about me just now because I want to talk about the crazy online backlash from the so-called online right, the kind of keyboard online warriors. You know, you might call me one of those sometimes. But anyway, of people who are absolutely outraged that they have selected a, first of all, non-native English person and someone who is a Muslim. And, you know, it's sad for me to see kind of how ruthless some of this backlash has been, because it sort of reveals a lot of things about what these people think when it comes to identity, immigration, and nationality, right? And you know that I'm super critical about immigration, and there's lots of things that people would think I feel is radical and what we need to do in this country. But I think there's a tinge of hypocrisy with some of the stuff that they're saying here. So if you don't know who Laila is, we're just going to take a quick look at her speech. Bring this, there we go.
I love this city with all my heart.
Oh, it's on double the speed. Let's go to normal. All right, let's go.
But unlike some in this room, I'm not blind to what it's become. London, one of the greatest cities on earth, is no longer safe. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened on Sadiq Khan's watch. Let's just go through some stats. Knife crime in London is up 68% since 2016. Robberies up by more than 50% during that same period. More than 100 phones are stolen every single year, and that's just those we know about. We are living, ladies and gentlemen, through a rape epidemic. You see, crime for me is not theoretical, like some of the journalists who say I'm scaremonging. My family has experienced it many times. In fact, one time, my kids were targeted by gangs in balaclavas, who people say don't exist. Day after day, near us, in broad daylight. We were all terrified. I turned to the police, naturally. I was told there were not enough resources. So I gathered the evidence myself. In fact, I just had a baby then. I put him in the carrier. I followed the gangs. I took photos because they were all in balaclavas. Their shoes were very distinct. I protected my family when the state couldn't. The press called me vigilante mum, but I should never have been put in that position. There should have been backup, but there wasn't. There should have been leadership that cared, but there wasn't. And I had to risk my life, my baby's life, my family's life to protect my family. Enough. I speak to so many women in this city who don't feel safe. Why would they? There's no police, and hardly any rape offences are prosecuted. I speak to women who've been raped who have been told by the police, I'm sorry, there's not enough evidence. And we all know rape happens when no one sees. I speak to parents like myself who panic every time their child doesn't pick up the phone. I think, has he been stabbed? Has he got into a fight? Has my daughter been sexually harassed? And I do see masked gangs roam our streets. I saw it as a criminal prosecutor in the areas I went to, and I see it in my area. And they carry knives and behave as no one will stop them. And most of the time, sadly, in this city, no one does. See, Londoners like me.
Nice. I'm going to stop it there. So the screen. Yes, I'm getting better at this, everyone. Now, I think well worth watching the speech. I think it was excellent, personally. You can search on YouTube, Laila Cunningham speech. It will come right up. And I think what she's doing is very intelligent here, because she has sort of been one of Reform UK's spokespeople on crime and rape, and especially a lot of the raping and sexual assaults we're seeing from the illegal migrants in the hotels. And you know that Reform is obviously, their brand is tough on immigration. They want to stop all illegal immigration. They want to end indefinite leave to remain. They actually want to think a net negative immigration at this point. And their whole mantra is about prioritizing the British people and not putting foreign nationals above the citizens. Who would have thought that would be such a controversial thing? But whenever they say stuff like this, the Labour Party and Zach Polanski from the Greens really loses his shit, right? And I think they've positioned Leila quite well, because, you know, we're in this kind of left-wing, globalist, internationalist, liberal, hyper-liberal world order, right? And, you know, she is someone of immigrant background. She's a woman. She's a family woman. She has 7 children. She's a successful lawyer, and she is unapologetic and unashamed for speaking out on this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that you have to combat fire with fire and say, oh, well, we have to have a black candidate because they're the only one that can call out the left's hypocrisy and say everything you say is racist. I understand that, but I do think as we kind of translate through this zeitgeist and move on to possibly a new form of politics and a new form of culture in our society, that it is an effective tactic, okay? Because it's very difficult for them to argue this. And also people argue with Kemi Badenoch, you know, she's the leader of the Conservative Party. The Labour Party have never had a black candidate. But I think what she's doing is very intelligent, because I think for Londoners, some of the most important things would be crime, the cost of living, transport, and all of this environmental stuff. Now, she can't really do too much about the cost of living because that's more of a centralized government thing. But she can do a lot with crime, because the Mayor of London really owns the Met Police and can make decisions around their funding and their resources, stop and search, how neighborhoods are policed, you know, this crazy epidemic of theft that we have going on now. I've had my phone snatched twice. There are no police officers on Oxford Street even, which is the hotspot for it. You know, they could put 10 police officers on that street instead of them policing people's tweets. And maybe I'm naive and think this is simple, but it is one of the most vital cornerstones of our whole democracy is law and order. And you do get a very crazy faction of the Green Party left who are very kind of pro-criminal. They're anti-prison. They're, oh, well, if you do a horrible thing like rape a girl or steal things, it's only because society has been so terrible and racist to you, and you've grown up in poverty and all of that stuff. So I think that's quite a radical position, right? Most of us want to feel safe. We want to be able to wake up and do good by the people around us. And if there's criminals out there, they need to be punished, right? And if they come from a tough background and that has a part to do with it, that's difficult. I get it. But young girls should not be being raped because we want to feel sorry for those people, right? Same with shoplifting. That's basically become legal, you know? And with the phone theft, I'm pretty sure it's like 1% of all of those phone thieves gets prosecuted. So essentially stealing iPhones in London is just legal. We've seen similar things in America with all the looting. And yeah, I think just in comparison to Sadiq Khan, the tragedy of Sadiq Khan, she is a fantastic candidate in comparison. And she actually mentioned something about him, which I forgot, so I'm going to keep playing.
Have lost faith in the law. The social contract and the state has failed in its first duty to keep us safe. This is the London that Sadiq Khan has created. A city where criminals operate freely, where victims are sacrificed, ignored. People are scared. And Khan thinks it's enough to tweet platitudes, random stats. Because let's face it, Khan never accepts responsibility. No, he attacks anyone who says London's dangerous. He calls them far right, racist. He ludicrously says that criticism of his record is because he's Muslim, and we are all Islamophobic. Frankly, it's an insult to victims and to Londoners.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So, I mean, by that logic, I'm definitely Islamophobic because Sadiq Khan is a terrible mayor. He is a narcissist. He peddles his own racial and religious self-interests. He is obsessed with pride, and he puts those banners all over Regent Street of the Pride Progress flag. He has decimated the ability to drive in London, especially working class people get in their van, get in their car. They have to pay this crazy surcharge. And even in my area, for example, there are lots of parking spaces. And we bought a new flat just 2 years ago. And there's lots of parking spaces, and we live in a car-free zone, meaning we're not allowed to buy a permit no matter how much we want to pay for it. The only people that can park their cars are blue badge holders and private owners of some of the properties, like the management company around here. So again, you're like favoring the disabled. That's okay, I get it, blue badge, but we're not even permitted to purchase a permit. And just because you outlaw cars, basically, doesn't mean that people are just going to suddenly not need to drive anymore. And we have a car, so it's absolutely needed. So I think what she's doing here is very intelligent, and I'm very, very pleased with the candidate they've chosen. Now, we'll get into the criticisms about her religion and immigrant status, right? So naturally, a lot of people are freaking out because she's Muslim, although to me, she seems like an extremely secularist, modest Muslim and doesn't really adhere to the doctrine too much. She's very much pro-Britain, and she's able to call out Sadiq Khan for his ridiculous, childish attempts to bat off any criticism by saying you're an Islamophobe. You know, Trump is extremely critical of Sadiq Khan, and he's quite nasty about him. But when Sadiq Khan tries to rebuttal his criticism, he says he's a racist, he's a misogynist, he's an Islamophobe. And it's just a very, very weak argument. Donald Trump at that video that came out where he was saying, and in London, they want to go to Sharia law in reference to Sadiq Khan. And Trump says outrageous stuff, right? So there's no push right now to make London Sharia law, like that, for that to be our governing legal system. However, just like people say, don't take everything he says literally, but take it seriously. And he is referring to the fact that we have many Sharia councils and Sharia courts all over the UK where more radical sects of Islam are resolving their marriage and, for all we know, criminal disputes in private with an imam, with a man. They're terrible for women's rights because the woman's voice matters far less than the man's, and it's difficult for her to get a divorce. It's difficult for her to report domestic violence. It's a very patriarchal system, but the left love it because they think it's culturally enriching. They think it's multiculturalism, and it's a form of cultural relativism. So that's where a lot of the critique about that comes from, and Sadiq Khan. And I think a lot of us, Leila included, would want to see these Sharia courts gone, right? But she does get asked about this criticism because we're going to look at some of the reactions in a bit on, you know, this animosity towards Muslims and this debate we're having on, is Islam compatible with the West, which is a very useful debate. It is not a far-right debate. We're seeing a lot of Islamic terrorism. We're seeing a lot of Islamic sectarianism trying to take over our politics. We've seen some of our towns and cities in the UK become almost majority Muslim and change our culture completely. And this is a very, very important debate. You know, their birth rate is much higher. So we don't need to shy away from that debate at all. And there's a balance here between, you know, hate just towards a person because of how they look and their religion, and an argument about what is this ideology as a whole, and can you separate the Muslim from the extreme side of the ideology? So this is a clip of her responding to some of these thoughts that people are having.
But it's a hurdle you guys have to overcome.
Damn it, double the speed. Sorry. Okay.
Regardless, let's talk about Islam. You're very outspoken on it. Were your parents Muslim?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are.
So
So am I.
You've said that, and you said you receive Islamophobic abuse often. What kind of things are being said to you, or threats being made to you?
Oh, so I get abuse on both sides. So I get called an Islamic, can I say the word?
Yeah.
Whore.
Okay, you can say that.
Or a Muslim cunt.
Okay, you can't say that one.
So I get those kind of things a lot.
Okay.
You bow down, you know, to your religion. You know, you're not British. You'll be deported. And then on the far left, after I think James O'Brien compared me to Lord Ha. I don't know how you pronounce it. Just literally for agreeing with people in New York that London is dangerous. And so on that side, I get, you know, after that, I got the only good fascist is a dead fascist. The only good racist is a dead racist. So it really is dangerous when they talk about things like
Just a side note, her cheekbones are amazing. Look at that. I wonder if she has filler.
this. And I do worry from both sides, right?
Yeah.
But I have to speak up, because the rape gangs, wanting Islamophobia laws, the burqa, that's not part of religion. You know, it says in religion to be modest. It doesn't say cover your face. This comes from Afghanistan, Saudi Wahhabism. It's actually got nothing to do. It actually says in the Quran that you have to respect the laws where you are. It kind of talks about assimilation. And so I feel I have to say that, you know, there are very, very British Muslims in this country who do not associate themselves at all with the radical Islam that you've seen take hold in some of our country.
Yeah. But you also said you don't blame people for holding anti-Muslim prejudice.
No.
But sure, that's a bad thing. Surely no one should be holding prejudice against anyone because of their religion.
But it's not about my religion. So if you're only exposed to Islamic terrorism, which we've had in this country and internationally, if you're only exposed to Pakistani rape gangs who raped those girls because they were white, if you're only exposed to a government that wants to criminalize criticizing Islam with Islamophobia laws, and you see women in a burqa and you see Sharia courts flourish, what's there to like?
Yeah, but who is living under a rock and they're only experiencing the very worst parts of that?
Very, very good. I think that's quite powerful, you know, and I've seen her say this on other podcasts. You know, I really do understand the hate and the animosity that's coming towards Islam and Muslims. And that's very powerful, because it's important to address concerns, even if some of them are coming out as extremely hateful. There are many, many people who are raising quite reasonable concerns. And, you know, Tommy Robinson is a very controversial figure, but even he raises reasonable concerns around the Islamic community, the culture, and the doctrine within the Quran and the Hadiths, and how that is playing out in our country. So it's very powerful to see her, you know, there's no ounce of her being afraid of that. There's no ounce of her taking it personally, which is what it seems to be the case that all prominent Muslim figures in the realm, they just take everything personally and shut it down. And this is why people have such skepticism over Islam, because when you compare it with the Catholic Church scandal, of course, there would have been some Catholics who, you know, just wanted to cover it up completely, and the clergy did. But the majority of Catholics themselves were the first to condemn it and not feel sorry for themselves, right? And we see that with the Pakistani rape gang. So I think she's a very powerful voice to talk on this stuff. Now, when it comes to how she talks about her religion, I'm a bit skeptical. I think that I don't want to say she sanitizes it completely, but I think she comes from a particular background, possibly wealthy, very westernized, modern, contemporary. Clearly her parents believe in Western British culture, not kind of fundamental Islamic culture. But I get the impression that she's grown up and she hasn't really been someone that's going to mosque all the time, praying 5 times a day, reading the Quran all the time. And she says in other interviews that she's just more of a spiritual person and she believes in God, but she doesn't believe in all these do's and don'ts, right? So that's pretty ambiguous. And Islam is a specific religion and it has its specific ideas and doctrine. And I think it would be amazing for her. I mean, I just get the feeling that she just hasn't really looked into it enough because she's more concerned with other issues, which is totally understandable too. But I think the next step for her, which would be really powerful, would be to say, look, yes, there are things in this religion, in our books, which actually condone beating your wife, condone taking sex slaves from non-Muslim people when you conquer them, for killing people for apostasy. That's true, right? But she could be a voice saying, in this country, we practice a form of this religion that discards those things. We remove extremists in mosques who preach those things and tell people to hate Jews and kill Jews. That is not the form of Islam we tolerate in this country. And other religions have modernized. I think it's possible. I think it's a huge challenge. And I think that we need to be honest with ourselves that Islam has extreme doctrine. And because the Quran is the literal word of God, then you get many, many Muslims believing every single word. And that's the problem, because the Bible, Christians acknowledge this was written by man. So it's much easier to say that thing they said there is crazy. That's from centuries ago. We don't do that anymore. We've modernized. It's more difficult to do that with Islam because they think everything in the Quran is the literal word of God and it's perfection. But if we're going to get through this in this country, there has to be a form of reforming it. I don't know if that's possible. And at the stage I'm at now, I believe Islam fundamentally as a doctrine is more harmful than Judaism or Christianity. I think when left unchecked, it leans towards politics, taking over, subjugation of women, subjugation of gays, a very patriarchal society, obviously all the clothing, which I think is quite grim. And it needs very strict bounds. And I'm just not sure if that's possible. But what I do know is that there are absolutely Muslims in this country who exist who do not believe in any of that extremist stuff and do not secretly want to take over and just are like Leila. Like, you know, she's more patriotic than Keir Starmer, than all the crazy white lefty liberals who want to give away our country to the national stage. So a lot of the arguments coming out, which we're going to look at, I think are extremely unfair. So here's Dan Wootton, right? So he used to work for GB News. You may be familiar with him. Let's see what he has to say.
I don't want a second Muslim mayor of London. There, I have said it. I have outlined my position robustly on X as well after Nigel Farage announced the practicing Muslim Laila Cunningham will be Reform UK's candidate to run against London's failed Islamist Mayor Sadiq Khan at the next election. So, not surprisingly, I have been accused of all sorts today, especially, disappointingly, from some of those in the Conservative movement. But to think that embracing Islamism on the right is the only way to save London from an Islamist takeover, from the Islamist Khan, well, to me, that is deeply depressing. And I don't even think this should be a controversial position on the British right. It's also not to say that Leila Cunningham herself doesn't make some brilliant points when she appears regularly on GB News, but she has also never been asked once on GB News about the impact of her faith on politics. So I just want to be very clear on my position. We are a Christian country. We need a Christian in charge of the capital to save it from the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, to save it from the out-of-control crime driven by illegals, to save it from the mosques of East London, which are radicalizing British-born innocents to become women-hating, gay-hating, Western-hating suicide bombers. And that is no exaggeration, by the way.
Okay, so a pretty strong take from Dan. And look, he actually makes a lot of decent points there. And I agree with maybe like 75% of what he said. So I think, again, it's important to listen to these concerns because they are real concerns, right? So before I address the criticism, I just want to look at some of the, stuff that's been coming out on X, right? So this Basil the Great, Leila Cunningham replaced Ant Middleton as Reform's pick for London mayor. One is a Muslim, the other is a veteran. Did Reform make the wrong choice? Let me just put this fuller screen. There you go. Now, Community Noted said he was never actually the pick for mayor of London, but he did express interest. And listen, like, I'm sure this guy is a decent guy now, but you can criticize him too. I mean, this MP mentioned how he was sentenced to 14 months in prison for the unlawful wounding of a male police officer and the common assault of female police officers. And I think he's had some other dodgy stuff going on with crime as well. So it's not like he's some sort of saint. I mean, if they want to position a Christian, white, English guy, go for it. But maybe you could pick someone better, right? Hugh Anthony says, Reform once again using foreign Muslim candidates. Will they use British candidates? This girl who I've seen, like she seems kind of sweet as a girl, but I've seen her come online in the last year and join the debate and just become increasingly like anti-Jew and just very ethno-nationalist in tone. But she says, Leila Cunningham is a Muslim from Egypt. This should immediately disqualify her from being able to stand for any position in power in the UK. Swapping one Muslim for another is not going to save this country. England must be prepared for the English, and that is a fair, just thing to want. Fair enough. Dan, I had to look through his X account, right? Because it has been, he is just at war with everyone over this. He's going nuts. And he's replying to lots of tweets about it because Leila described the people who are behaving this way as far right, which I do think is a bit of an error, right? I just think these phrases, immediately people switch off. I think she should have just argued the points instead. Now, James Esses mentions that he has a concern as she's been out marching with Pride as an elected representative, and just yesterday listed trans people as a cohort she wants to be there for. Just yesterday? Oh, I'd have to look into that. Interesting. So this was her in 2022. And I would be slightly concerned over this too. I mean, I'd like to see what her position is on it now. But I would assume that she is a lot more well-versed in the gender debate when it comes to women's rights, because Reform are pretty solid on that, to be perfectly honest. Connor Tomlinson naturally was very displeased with this. So he did write a lot about it. We shouldn't trust Cunningham, not just because she's a Muslim, and both the British right and public at large don't like Islam. We shouldn't trust her because her entire political career appears to be about making her famous. She wants to be in power and on camera. I just think that's a big assumption, because I really like the stuff she says, and I think she believes it. I genuinely do believe that, and I think that she cares. I think she genuinely cares. And of course, every politician is in some way aspiring for themselves too. It's just the way it is, right? Lawrence Fox, can you guess how many non-Muslims are serving as mayors in any Islamic cities today? Yes, you are correct. That's true. And we'd see these arguments. But again, I don't think we should model ourselves off Islamic countries in general, because there are pretty much everything else they do, we wouldn't do, right? So I think we should make our own arguments when it comes to these things. Dan, how is the mainstream right not getting this? Reform UK have capitulated to Islamists. Picking the Muslim Leila Cunningham to battle Sadiq Khan to become mayor of London is deeply depressing. Yeah, so there's, you see he's picked like the veteran photo next to her, which is funny. Final one. Wonder what Leila's real first name is. Fatima. Now, like that is just unnecessarily cruel, and it is just making it all about her race. And I mean, in general, right? Let me move this back. Oh, there we go. So here's my take, right? If you aspire and you hope to have a native English mayor who is a Christian, I think that's totally fine. I think it's perfectly fine after, what will be 12 years of Sadiq Khan peddling his woke, internationalist, Islamic, Pakistani grievances and self-interests on our stage in the capital city of Britain. I think it is totally fair to say, look, I'd rather just the next person be of English heritage and a Christian, because I feel they better represent the country, and I think they would have our interests better at heart. I think that's totally fair. And if they can play the game, the English can too, right? Because these groups spend all day saying we need more of us in parliament. We need to advocate for like Muslim politicians, Muslim conservatives, Muslim Labour Party. So, it has to work both ways. So I think that's totally reasonable. And I think the skepticism over Islam is reasonable, like I said, and I'm very skeptical of it too. I actually fear Islam and it growing. However, unless you believe that anyone who is not of native heritage ethnically should be allowed to be a British citizen, even if you're born here, then this argument doesn't really hold, right? Because what kind of rule do we have in this country? She was born here. She's never lived in Egypt. She's a British citizen, and therefore she is eligible to run in politics. Now, I think the argument of if you're a foreign national, so if you were born in another country, I think the argument against that is much stronger. I mean, I'm Ireland, so I'm of the sort of same ethnic group adjacent or whatever. But I don't think I should be a public official in this country because I wasn't born here, even though my loyalty is with the UK. And me and Ireland have a very complicated relationship. So I can guarantee you, if I went into politics, I would not be promoting just the Irish interests unless they were in the interests of the UK. Be that as it may, I think that's a valid argument. But unless you're saying, okay, we either strip these people of their citizenship or make them second-class citizens that just because they're not ethnically white or Christian, that they can't run for office, or we just deport anyone, like the extreme ethno-nationalist position. We just deport anyone without this heritage. Unless that's your position, then what are you arguing exactly? Because this is the reality. Like, I have such sympathy and concern myself over the rapid demographic change of this country, and the fact that if trends continue, it's expected that the white English will become a minority in their own country. I think that should never, ever happen. I think they need to remain the majority group. And also that Islam will grow and grow, and potentially by the end of the century, it will comprise a third of our population, if not more. So these concerns are real. I think they should be addressed. I think that the native group should be protected in their demographic security. But we do have millions and millions of Muslims in this country, and we're not going back. We're not going to go back to a day when all of them are gone, okay? I don't want that. I think there's a good portion of them that should go because they believe in extremist things and they're sympathetic to Hamas. They're bringing Palestine onto our streets when it has nothing to do with this country. They are promoting their own sectarian interests in politics, and they are expansive, right? So we can encourage those people to leave by banning some of the extremist stuff, taking away benefits from foreign nationals, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not going to just deport everyone who is not white and who's not a Muslim. So what better example is there of the ideal future than Leila Cunningham? You know, she doesn't wear a hijab. She never talks about religion. She's completely westernized. She is a working mother who's had 7 children. She's an ex-basketball player. She's had a successful career. She is unapologetic, speaking out against her own faith and ethnic groups. So I just think like this would be a good example to put in front of people and say, this is what we're talking about when we talk about integration and prioritizing British people, regardless of what you look like. And that is what Reform UK is, right? They're a civic nationalist party. They don't believe in labeling people based on their skin color, their sexuality, their religion. And that's just what they're about, as long as they have the British interest central, not their race, not their religion, just British people. So I can very much get on board with her. And I just think we have to be realistic. You know, it's the same as the people who think we're going to become a communist country. or just the insane demands of the Green Party. I think that's a utopia that doesn't exist. But I also think this ethno-nationalist utopia where everyone is native born and all of our public figures are of native ancestry is also a utopia. And you only have to look to all of the native born politicians who've caused all of these problems. Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, you know, all of these people, Rory Stewart in politics, who decided to inflict mass migration on the country and illegal migration on the country and call everyone racist. That came from white people. So it's not that cut and dry, in my opinion. And I think she's a great candidate. So let me know what you think of her. And we're going to move on to the next story. So just by the way, if anyone's watching live and wants to send a super chat, I will bring you up on screen and respond to you directly. Just have a quick look. No, I can see Isabel has joined again as a member. Thank you very much, Isabel. Good to see you back. All right. So next one, guys. This is a fun topic, right? And it's a funny topic. We're talking about the Traitors, UK. Okay. And again, this is racial identity politics, but this time it's coming from the complete opposite angle. Now, I always watch the Traitors. I'm a diehard fan. I don't really watch that much TV because I watch a lot of YouTube and make YouTube. But especially reality TV, I never loved it. But I'm a fan of the Traitors. And they're currently on season 4, episode 4. And these are the contestants, right? So it's a nice kind of diverse group of people, as you'd expect. But they are in the middle of a race row. And here's an article that's talking about it, right? So it says, I love the Traitors, but it has one major issue and we need to start talking about it. Even the most beloved reality show on television holds up a mirror to our unconscious biases. So this argument's been made before, right? Not just about the Traitors, but by Big Brother, I'm a Celebrity. And it essentially concerns whenever a ethnic minority is voted out early in the series or gets eliminated because they're not very talented, that just means this is because of racism. And this is our unconscious biases. So they've essentially created this phenomenon where it's impossible to be a person of color and be the worst person in the show and get voted off first. Because anytime that happens, you'll be accused of racism. Now, where did I have the... Oh yeah, let's just look at the... Right. So these are the contestants here, okay? And you can see this woman here who is mixed race, possibly. She's not white. She was banished first. If you don't know what these things mean, don't worry. She was eliminated first, essentially. This woman who is, again, not white, was eliminated second. And this man is under scrutiny at the moment. And, you know, in my opinion, these things have happened because of naturally occurring events and skepticism people have of whether they're a traitor or not. But of course, other people are just putting it down.
Ourselves and not...
The angry black woman. I'm so sick of that argument. It's like a black woman can just never be angry anymore. I get angry. I'm the white angry gay man sometimes. Black women also get angry, right? It's a real thing. There's grains of truth in some of these things. Like, yes, some black women from other cultures are more brazen and speak louder and shout a bit more often, but it doesn't mean that every time a black woman is angry that it's racist and that there's no such thing as an angry black woman. And if you point it out, you're racist. It's just utterly absurd, right? So you can kind of tell the argument she's going on. But let's look at this guy is brilliant.
First Spanish player this series was Judy, which aligns with the recurring pattern on the show where people of the global majority, black people particularly, are more likely to be suspected early on. Early banishment.
I cannot stand the global majority, you know, because what lies behind that is this kind of racial superiority that they're saying, remember, you're actually the minority globally, so we have dominance over you. And I really think we're at the point now, guys, where we moved on from white supremacy as a systemic issue that's pervasive across our society, institutions, and laws. And I actually think, controversial statement here, that we now have black supremacy because they believe they should be free from criticism. They should get free passes to the final of a TV series otherwise you're racist. You can't call them angry, otherwise you're racist. They need special accommodations for jobs, for applications. They need to peddle their own Black pride, Black-owned businesses. I mean, can you not see it? It just exists. Obviously, so many Black people don't feel this way. And they're like, stop doing this. You know, I don't want a part of that. And it's just like I feel with the LGBTQIA plus community, right? Just like that.
Judgement is where bias is most visible because the group is making decisions with little tangible evidence and relying heavily on perception and instinct, which is where racialized assumptions tend to surface. In Judy's
That's the whole point of the show. And in the first episode, no one has a fucking clue. I've never watched a first episode of The Traitors where anyone has a clue who the traitors are. They're all just going off, oh, when we took off our blindfolds, like you looked nervous. Or, oh, you looked at Claudia when she said the traitors. And most of the time they're wrong. But I totally understand where they're coming from, because if I was on that show, who knows how I would do? I'd probably get banished pretty quickly. But if I was on that show, you don't have much to go off. You have to like pull at threads, and then everyone else at the table just follows like a sheep and votes out the same person because they don't have a clue either. And it is purely circumstantial in this case. Oh, no, we don't want to watch other videos of
Judy's case, suspicion originated almost entirely from Sam, who moved around the group claiming that her demeanor had changed in a suspicious way. She apparently was very expressive before the game started, but quieter and more withdrawn when it began, which is a weak basis for suspicion because the game makes almost everyone more guarded. And such changes in demeanor are normal responses to pressure in a high-stakes environment. And what makes the influence of bias particularly clear is that when Judy became aware that Sam had been talking about her in such a way and approached him to get an understanding of where his suspicion was coming from, he didn't really meaningfully engage or give her space to reassure him. His mind was made up, and when he repeated his rationale at the round table, most of the group aligned with him and voted Judy out. This isn't necessarily about...
All right, Benji, 18,000 likes, guys. What the hell? I just can't with these people. Like, is there never a situation in which you cannot be white and just be the bad guy or the villain or the person voted out or the angry person? And they love it. I've seen this happen every time if an ethnic minority happens to be called out or to be voted out first. It's like, oh my God, this is racism. This is unconscious bias. And you know what? I like my facts, guys. I like my research and I like my statistics. So I'm going to prove you fucking wrong, bitches. Because you should be arguing with actual statistics, right? There is no basis for an argument where someone gets voted out and you're like, this is because of racism. You don't know what they're thinking. It's completely impossible to prove. And I think it is an unworthy debate. It is a stupid debate if you cannot prove what you're saying. Even George Floyd, who was killed by that police officer, was not criminalized for a racial crime, a race-based crime upon his conviction. He was convicted of murder, right? But it was impossible to prove that what happened was because of racism. And that is true. The only way you could prove this is if George Floyd's killer was shouting racial abuse at him while he was killing him, or referred to the fact that he was being harsher with him because of his race. That didn't happen. And it's same with this show. If one of the contestants explicitly said, I am voting this person out because I don't like brown people, or I want to promote my own racial group. Like, that would never happen on the BBC. Then you'd be able to prove it. And just think about it. This is the BBC, right? The contestants on these shows, they are not a representative of multicultural UK, right? Let's just look at where's the photo? These guys. All right. This may look multicultural and multi-ethnic, but this is like liberal, middle-class, elite, university-educated type people. You may get a few odd ones here and there, but especially the celebrity traitors that we had recently. You know, you had different races, different sexualities. They were all like liberal yuppies. So if anyone is not going to have unconscious bias, it's going to be these people. These people are probably more likely to be like, oh, well, I really want to win, but I'm gonna let this ethnic minority win because I want to be a savior. And I mean, let the contestants speak for themselves, because no one on the show is saying that I've seen this is because of racism. But then you have all these saviors coming on the internet saying, I'm going to do this justice for them. But let's go back to the facts, right? Because I mentioned I like facts, and I'm going to prove these race baiting bitches wrong, everyone. So just bear with me here. Here we have the Traitors Series 3. Okay, so this was a year ago. Let's look at the contestants. All right, so you have person at the top who was eliminated first, person at the bottom who won. So Leanne Quigley and Jake were the winners. So congratulations to them. However, I recall someone called Mina from Liverpool who was a traitor from the beginning, and she was banished in episode 10. So she made it all the way to episode 10. And, you know, of course, she must have been a white... Oh. I would have thought she would have been a white... No. She is clearly an ethnic minority. She's part of the global majority. The global majority, everyone. So that doesn't seem to hold. And this is only a year ago. Okay, let's have a look at another one of these names. Okay, so Leon Jackman. He was banished just one episode before. Made it to episode 9. Bear in mind, there's only 12 episodes. Okay. Surely, okay, Leon Jackman. That sounds like a white guy's. Oh no. Oh dear. I was wrong again. What do you know? Another ethnic minority slipped through the racist contestants and made it to almost the end. Right? Now let's look at one of the first eliminated. Nathan Kaider. Okay, so he was banished. So he was voted out by the whole group, by everyone, by all 24 contestants, however many there were. So Kaider, that sounds like a black name, you know what I mean? So, oh. It appears to be a cis white straight man, guys. So I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I know I'm being extremely patronizing here, but can you see where I'm going with this? Let's look at season 2, all right? Because guys, season 3, that must have just been the not racist one. And normally it's quite racist, right? Normally it's just full of racist, unconscious bias and bigotry. So that was a fluke, season 2, right? There must have been some weird stars aligning. So let's look at one of the finalists. So we had Harry won, Molly came second. All right, so congrats to them. Jazz Singh, episode 12. Now, that doesn't sound like a white name, but I must be wrong. Oh. Guys, I'm not good at this game because this show is supposed to be racist. And it's not being racist for me. Why won't you work, show? You're not playing your part. You're making me very unhappy as a white, lived-out freak. Okay, so that must have been a fluke too. Let's try someone else. Who did I mark out here again? I actually can't remember. Oh yeah, it was her. Okay, yeah, this is an interesting one, right? Jasmine. She made it all the way to episode 11, which is the sequel. Sorry, the penultimate episode. Jasmine. She doesn't look very white to me. And actually, she sticks in my mind because I remember there was a round table where she was getting frustrated and angry, just like many of the contestants do. Totally understandable. I don't begrudge her of that. And afterwards, people were online saying, oh my God, they called her aggressive because she's black. It's like, coming from the same people who generalize about cis, white, straight men all the time. Everything they do is because they're a cis, white, straight man. It's always about their race, their group. But for these people, it apparently never is, unless it's useful for them and they're talking about the experience of Black, lesbian, queer bodies and Black-owned businesses and my Black yoga class. It's like, okay, well, I just get really angry, guys, at hypocrisy and injustice. And the hypocrisy and the lack of coherent arguments is just so clear. I mean, all I had to do was go on Wikipedia and show you guys this. to prove that their claims have no basis. In fact, it's like the opposite. The ethnic minorities seem on average to do pretty well, just as well as the others, maybe a tiny bit more, but it's all coincidence. Look at the first person who was eliminated on season 2, Aubrey. Oh, there he is. Can't remember if he's straight, but it looks like a white man. Dun, dun, dun. Right. And this year, I also watched the Irish Traitors. Look at the winners. This is the presenter in the middle with the red. Okay, we have this white Irish girl. Okay, she's probably a racist. Oh, but look at these two beautiful black women. These were the 3 victors, guys. They won the series. And this is Ireland, right? I mean, if I had to pick a country that maybe had more racism ingrained in them, it would be Ireland over England. But Ireland is still not a racist country by any means. Who's this? This was the winner of the Celebrity Traitors UK, the USA version, but they did it in the UK a couple of years ago. So she managed to win the whole thing. And this just really isn't adding up, is it, anymore? Yeah, so you guys are all wrong. You're all cringe, crisp, and cute. And I've no time for you. The fact that effing Good Morning Britain is having on these yonks, being like, can you please explain to us why you feel there's unconscious bias in the show? It's like, well, we all have to be very cognizant that, you know, we may not be aware of these. And it's like, just look at the data, look at the stats. Oh, let me, you know what you guys think. Am I bugging out on this? Like, am I delusional? Because I just think this is one of those things that's just so easy to disprove. And actually, for all the non-whites out there watching this video and agree with me, I feel your pain. And I think it is so incredibly patronizing that you can't be shite at a TV show or fail, you know, just like all of us do without it being put down to racism, you know? It's very, very sad. And that Judy woman who got voted out seemed like a nice lady. And they had very little to go off, but that is just always the case. And if you had to think about it, in the Traitors, everyone is desperate to win. It's ruthless. They'll vote off their best friend. They'll vote off their fellow traitor. No one's thinking about race. They're not like, oh, I better get all the blacks off first. And like the way that reality TV shows vet these people, like I've looked at reality TV show applications before and I've just decided there's no point because you have to provide your social media accounts. They'll take one look at mine and be like, nope. And no racists who are going to be outward racists are going to be on these shows. I really do believe that. So that's it with that, everyone. Let me just get, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bring her up on screen. Let me know what you think. Now, everyone, we've come to the end of the live stream for YouTube and X, and now is where we head on over to Substack. And I'm going to continue with this bonus after show where I'm going to dive into the Planet Fitness controversy. Just a little preview here. The girl who filmed the video of a man masturbating in the women's bathroom of Planet Fitness says the workers did nothing. So we're going to be looking at that reaction in an extra special uncut after show. So the link is in the chat. You can join as a member to watch that. Join me there. And it will also be uploaded as a video to Substack afterwards. And that's everything for the main live, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to be bringing you this more often. If you haven't liked the video, welcome you to subscribe to the channel. And if you're over on Substack, I'll see you there. And with that said, have a good night. And if you're in the UK, I hope you survive these storms which are coming because it looks pretty intense. See you later.